And namaste everyone. Welcome to Hindu Lounge. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. Hindu Pact is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America (VHPA). I'm Ajay Shah. I'm the president of World Hindu Council of America or VHPA, and with me, as always, is Sudha Jagannathan. And Sudha is one of the top Hindu advocates in America, and she does relentless work for Hindu cause in America. So, welcome, Sudha. So we have a really interesting topic today. I don't think too many people have still caught on to it, but we hear about AI all the time, and people talk about like, oh, the artificial intelligence is going to take over the world, and we are going to automate everything and all that. And we started thinking about it, and we said, you know what? It may take over the world, it may not take over the world, we don't know, but is there something we can use the technology to further the Hindu? Is there a way where we can further the technology use the technology rather to further the Hindu cause? And so we started thinking about innovative use of artificial intelligence, and we said, "Look, we Hindu phobia and Hindu hatred is something that has really um, you know up my in front of our minds right now, because there's so many things going on. There's things happening in Bangladesh. There are reports coming out from all kinds of places, like Hindus for Human Rights and Indian American Muslim Council, and that's a full-time job for them to put out reports maligning the Hindus. And so this, and we can't really take every our time, our precious daily time, because we are not paid political hacks like some of the other people, and spend all day all night countering that, right? So it's like, is there a way to come up with innovative tools to counter that? And so that today we are going to talk about some of those tools that we have built from scratch to counter Hindu hate. Now, I want to say that we are not the first to think about it. There was already a website, or rather a Twitter account and a website called Hindu Mesia. They had done some work, but they were doing more on text analytics and some sentiment and things like that. But what we are going to show today to our audience is something that is in a completely different category of using really state of the art, cutting edge tools to counter Hinduphobia. So with that, Sudha, welcome, and take it away.
Namaste to everybody. I'm very excited to hear about it, Ajay, because for the longest time, when all of the bad narratives happen in the media, in academia, in all sorts of personalities across the varieties of social media, when they attack us and malign us and present a picture of us as really terrible people, we stayed quiet. Or some of us would write to letters to the editor, but that's not enough. In today's time, the volume of rhetoric is so high. I think we need to be smart about how we counter. If we don't counter, we hurt our cause. We hurt ourselves in the homeland that we call America. And so it's a very important that we do the counter. And I'm glad to hear that we are using technology to do that, because that is where I feel like we Indian Americans, Hindu Americans, have an edge. We love technology. So let's see what you have got for
Yeah,
us
so let me start by saying, let me show you one example, and that kind of, the best way to do that is through an example, right? So this is a report that I'm going to show you now. It's a report by a group called Savera. Now, Savera is a let me go to that right window here. So I should have actually done it slightly differently, and that would have been a better use of technology and the time. But here we are. That's okay. Let me go to the right window and talk about it. So this is the report that Savera put out. Okay, it's called the Global VHP's Trail of Violence. They use all this rhetoric that is so uh, so anti-Hindu, and there's
Mhm.
just it's unbelievable that they write stuff like this. So let me walk you through what they have. So they come up with this report and global VHPA's Trail of Violence, as if VHP's full-time job is just violence, and we engage in violence. Now they don't uh, you know and you will see when I show you the counter that we have, you will see that it's just full of hate, full of Hindu hate. So you can see that this is the five organizations that got together. And by the way, they've created three reports. We're going to show you two reports today, but these are the reports that they created.
Can
Yes.
you make it full screen so we can see who these five organizations are?
Yeah, I think we have this way we can do. No. Let me see which is the best way to show it in full screen. I think this is about it because it's okay. Let me try one more thing and see if I can make it really full screen. And
It's important
how
for
about
the
now?
audience.
Does it work?
It's not
So
that.
I will voice over it. So
Well,
and then I'll post this report where everyone can access it.
mhm.
Because I don't know if there is any simple way. The way that it is done, I should have probably.
This is a little better. This is actually better.
Oh, this is
Why
better.
don't you read out each of them?
Okay, yeah.
The
So there are
cabal.
five organizations that got together. One of them is Ambedkar King Study Center or Circle. The other one is Dalit Solidarity Forum. The third one is the Hindus for Human Rights. I don't know why they call themselves Hindus. They don't like anything that is Hindu. The fourth one is India's Civil Watch, and the fifth one is Indian American Muslim Council. So these are the five organizations. They have never liked Hindus, and they find every which way to malign Hindus and Hindu organizations. So
Mhm.
they came up with this almost 50-page report. And they said, so if you look at the report, and I obviously don't want to read the whole report, but they would say, Hindu supremacy, the word like they use, how can Hindu be supremacist? We believe in Ekam Sata Vipra Bahuta Vadanti. We believe in Vasudeva Kutumbakam. There's nowhere where it says that we are, they people who don't believe in a single book, people who don't believe in a single way of worship, people cannot be supremacists because the whole idea of supremacist is assigned to people who have a single book and a single way of worship. We don't have that. And yet they would keep calling us supremacists because they think that if you repeat a lie a million times, it just sticks. And then they
Exactly.
go on to say that the link between white supremacists and Hindu supremacists in the US are merely one example of broader affinities between far right movements. So they associate Hindu organizations with far right. At the same time, they associate Hindu organizations with uh, the wi- every with discrimination and on the basis of caste and all the other things that kind of go with it, right? And we talked about a few weeks ago, we talked about ethno nationalism, and now they've said, well, you live in America, so you can't really be ethno nationalist, but you are now ethno nationalist with Modi in India join, and then they talk, they connect us. On one hand, they would say we are like Nazis. On the other hand, we say that we are in cahoots with uh, the extremist Jewish organization. So I don't know how you could reconcile the two extremes, right? But they talk about that. If you go down, and so they obviously they want someone to take action against us. So if left unchecked, Hindu supremacist groups are in danger of growing within both far right and the center, fueling uh, an evolving and ambitious white supremacist movement while blocking any real progressive politics from emerging within the Democratic Party. So they think that we have a control over Democratic Party in some way because of the centrist. There are a lot of centrists here. So they they have someone from Jewish currents. They have someone from as authors. They have Institute for Policy Research Studies. They have some other people who are part of the who wrote the foreword for this report, right? So they're trying to build the credibility. Not that these people are credible, but they're trying to build the credibility. And they go on to define Hindu supremacy. They go on to define Sangh Parivar. Then they talk about all the ecosystem that VHP has in America, including VHPA and HSS and all the programs that we have and all the other things, right? So they have a screenshot from VHPA website, and the VHP roles in anti-Muslim violence in India, and so on and so forth, right? And now, nothing to say about the fact that riots were there in India in 1800s. There were massacre of Hindus in 800 AD and 900 AD and 1000 and 1200 and 1500 and 1600 and all that. But they talk about it. They talk about the Babri Masjid demolition, Babri structure demolition, without comparing it with the Confederate statues that were brought out in America. And
Mhm.
these are the signs of slavery, and people bring them out. Just few weeks ago, Assad statues were brought down because he represented something that was terrible, and Babri structure represented something terrible because it was built on top of a mandir that was demolished. And even after that, the Supreme Court actually decided in the favor of Hindus. The Supreme Court came and said that yes, there was a temple there, and yes, there is a Hindus have a right to build a temple there, and that's why a grand Ram Mandir temple stands there today. But
And then
regardless,
also Indian government gave land and money for the Muslims to build something.
to build
They
a
take
mosque,
all of that. They take all of that and still say Babri Masjid.
correct.
Cry for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they keep going, global VHP events, global VHP in major events, and they talk about multiple, and then they talk about every time they talk about VHP India, if they know fully well that VHP America is a completely independent organization, 501c3 registered in America, they still talk about VHP America's role in everything, right? So this- and they talk about global VHP in major events, and they talk about Orissa, they talk about Delhi riots, where actually Hindus were the ones who actually suffered in
Mhm.
Delhi riots. So targeted Hindus were targeted. There was a police officer who was cut to pieces and
Yeah.
thrown in gutter,
Exactly.
in
Mm.
by piece, right?
Yeah.
And they still blame, and then they connect it to VHP America in some way or the other, which is fine. I mean, I think this is the way.
I'm just aghast, Jay, that they haven't connected the Hindus to 9/11 and all.
Yeah.
Why not?
Wait
Hey?
for the next report. Wait for the next report. I'm sure they're going there gradually.
They think
Um,
everybody is stupid. Yeah.
yeah, because they think that if you repeat a lie multiple times, then it becomes a truth. At some point, people believing in it, they start
Yeah.
believing in it, and they talk about VHP America's virulent anti-Muslim rhetoric. It's not virulent as some. They quote people who are not even part of VHP, who had left VHP and all that. But we're not going to. So this is the kind, and they talk about casteism, and they talk about the ecosystem, and there are a lot of people they have mentioned here. They're not even part of VHP, but uh, regardless, right? I mean, you talk about people like Vibhuti Jha and Purnima Nath, and these people have never been VHPA members, and they mention them as if they're members, prominent members of VHPA. So more than half the people mentioned here have nothing to do with VHPA. But who's going to fact check that? Who has time to do that? Because we all have our day jobs, we all have our other seva activities, we all have our sanskar activities, we all have our family related, supporting the family and supporting the soup kitchens and everything else, and and promoting dharmic way of life. We don't have time to kind of counter this kind of paid propaganda that they probably spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to create a report like this. We don't have that kind of money either.
Yeah.
So regardless, so they talk about that. They talk about Hindu supremacy is moving Hindus to moving Hindu Americans towards the far right, all kinds of stuff. I don't know how, we have expressly criticized Laura Loomer for the statements she has made against Hindus, and they somehow seem to think that we are in cahoots with Laura Loomer.
I know.
It's just unbelievable, right? Uh, but anyway, so they think that we are attacking the U.S. civil society. How? I don't understand. But anyway, they you know uh, Ilan Omar goes and stands at the Pakistani border in which is disputed, which is Pakistan has occupied that territory, and she's trying to legitimize, and we criticize that, and they think that we are routinely attacking a Muslim American politician without acknowledging that
Mentioning
every
what
single
they did.
person who is a Hindu, who stood for an election in America, who ran for the election in America, has been criticized by their allies.
Yeah.
But they find they make no mention of that, and
Yeah.
they find fault with the Hindu organizations, because Hindu organizations stood up for Kashmiri Hindus who have been driven out of their own homeland, they are the native people of Kashmir. They've been driven out of there for they've lived there since the beginning of time, and now they have no place in Kashmir. And you criticize that, and then they come back and say, oh, you're criticizing a Muslim American politician. What was Ilan Omar doing in a disputed territory by showing the support to the people who have taken over the Kashmir part that belongs to India, and their uh, there's the people, the terrorists who are supported by them, are uh, have aggressively driven out all the Hindus from the Kashmir Valley, right?
Right.
So they have, but again, who has time for all that? So they have conclusion, and then 36 pages, and then they have some terminology glossary kind of thing, and then they have endless number of footnotes. So you can see that they somehow quoting and putting hundreds of footnotes makes it legitimate. So they put in this report only 164. There's another report, there are 500 of them. All right. So we said, okay, we got to counter this. So how do we
Mhm.
counter this? So we used very innovative technology, all homegrown, home developed. We don't, you know, we are not. Uh, we are not relying on external kind of technology of any kind, and we said, okay, we will develop our own technology to counter this. So we came up with this report, and let's see if I get the right report here. This is the right one. Not this one, sorry. The other one. I'll show this one next.
Yeah.
And so we came up with this. Let's show you this one. Window. And I believe it is this one. Let's see. Keep forgetting which one I have to show. This one. Okay. So I think I was showing you this way, right? No, this way.
So first, let's define AHAD.
Right. So thank you for asking. Sometimes I take that for granted. Uh, AHAD is American Hindus Against Defamation, and American Hindus Against Defamation is started in 1997. It was the first, in a way, in today's terminology, what you would call the advocacy group in America. But it was limited, and is still limited to defending the denigration of Hindu icons, culture, murtis, uh, and Hindu practices, all that, the misuse and the abuse of these things.
Hmm.
And a slight extension to that is also defending defending Hindutva. So the Hindu way of life, because that's natural, right? Hindutva is Hindu plus Tattva. So the Tattva means essence. So Hindutva is the essence of Hindu Dharma. So defending the essence of Hindu Dharma, defending the Hindu culture, Hindu icons, Hindu symbols, Hindu murti, the representation of murtis, all of that, we started out actually in 1997 as a protest against representation of Bhagwan Krishna, Bhagwan Vishnu, uh, in Kalya Mardana in a movie. Sorry, rather in a music album by Nine Lives.
Oh.
Music album called Nine Lives by Aerosmith. So Aerosmith, a very popular group, they had an album called Nine Lives, and this album was produced by Sony Music,
Hmm.
and they had this Bhagwan Vishnu on a serpent with many heads.
Hmm.
And what they did was they replaced uh, the head of Bhagwan Vishnu, Bhagwan Krishna, with the head of a cat. And we thought it was a very inappropriate representation. So we started, and we had seen this kind of misrepresentation of Hindu symbols and Hindu deities for years, for decades.
Yeah.
Okay, this
Yeah.
is about the right time to start a protest against it. And so we started out as a protest against that. We formed a coalition of multiple Hindu organizations, and over 100,000 people signed a petition. And eventually, that album cover was replaced. They put out a new cover, which had nothing to do with Hindu imagery.
Did they ever apologize?
Yeah, they did. We got the apology in writing from Sony that they didn't mean to do this, and they apologized. And
How
then
do they get away even doing it, Ajay? That's my point.
yeah, But
Yeah.
so we started doing this, and we then eventually there was a bar that it was called Karma Club in Chicago,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they had the entire bar was Hindu themed bar. And we said, okay, you can't really do that. And so we have taken up a lot of such issues, and that was really the first time anyone anywhere in the world that somebody actually started a movement, a formal movement against the misrepresentation of Hindu symbols and
Hmm.
Hindu images. And in the every time we put out a protest note, we would get 100, 200,000 people to sign. And admittedly, it was early days of internet, so people were more eager to sign these protests
Yeah.
than they are
Then
today,
today.
because now there's just so much going on. People don't have time to sign all the signature campaigns, right? But
Yeah.
at that time, hundreds of thousands of people would actually sign these protests. And that is the history and legacy. In fact, there was a major casino project that came to us and said, we are building the casino, we are going to have Hindu themes represented in that. Would you take a look at this and tell us if there's anything offensive to Hindus in this presentation, in this plan that we have? And so we pointed out, we said, first of all, thank you for coming to us. We did not take any money. We don't take money from people. We said, we just want to prevent this, right? So we don't want any consulting fee. We don't want any of that. We sat with them for multiple days, and we said, okay, these are the things that Hindus will find offensive. Like, for example, put a money on a slot with Ganesha,
Oh.
and that would give you good luck to win in gambling in a slot machine, right? So I said, well, you can't really, gambling is not looked upon as favorably
It's a
among Hindus.
wise. That's where Kali lives.
Yeah, well, you look what happened to Yudhishthira after he gambled, right? So we
Yeah.
don't. It is not something that we endorse, we condone, and so please don't do that. Remove all the murti representations from the entire casino, and they did, and they were going to have all the classical Hindu dances like Bharatanatyam and all of that, and we said, don't do that. There are multiple folk dances that you can have, and that won't be offensive because they're folk dances, they're for fun, but don't do any dance which has religious connotation, and they agreed to all of that. So that is
Wow.
the history of AHAD. And so this is the next generation of fighting for the or rather fighting to prevent the denigration of Hindu dharma or Hindu way of life and Hindu principles. So we came up with this. We came up with a technology, and I'll show you what we have done, what kind of reports we generated, and then I'll show you the kind of technology we used, because we are very transparent.
Let's also look at the title you gave, Grahana at Savera. A lot of
Yeah, so so they call it Savera. Savera means daybreak, or it's morning, right?
dawn or
When the
something. Yeah.
sun rises, and there's
Yeah.
daybreak, and all of a sudden there's the rays of sun are shining, and it shines light on everything. And we said, what, this is not really this is not shining light on anything. In fact, Hindu dharma, Hindutva are the light, and what they're doing is bringing about the shade in there. And so
Mhm.
grahana means eclipse. And what they're doing is, there's already a sun brightly shining on the
Mhm.
world, has shown there, has been there for 7,000 for 10,000 years of Hindu history.
Mhm.
And you're now coming in your modern day avatar of, and you're putting a shade on it, and you're actually covering the sun that is already shining the light. So we are calling it eclipse at daybreak, or grahana at savera.
Very nice.
So we generated this. It's literally months and months of work, and I'll give you insight into the technology. But we created a report which is about 70 pages to counter the report. And you can see here a little bit of we work with a technology company called Tatva.ai, and we created this report, and you can see that we did a very technical analysis, right? What is the sentiment on this? So we created a summary of the report, and we said the tone is overwhelmingly negative, with Hindus portrayed as aggressors. It is an opinion piece that is disguised as research, and the bias rating, anti-Hindu bias rating, is 5 out of 5. It's extremely biased against Hindus. What the words that stick out in the whole report are far right, hate ecosystem, anti minority, and Hindu nationalism.
Hmm.
Okay. And then we created a bias graphic pie chart. We can see what is the bias made of. So, bias by labeling, story framing, spin, bias by omission. So, all these categories of bias. And then we talked about the sentiment is 80% negative, 10% neutral, 10% positive towards Hindus. And don't ask me where 10% positive is. Uh, it's hard to find in a 45-page report. Uh, but again, we are very transparent. So whatever the results we get from our algorithm, we present it, right? And then this is the analysis of the major claims that they've made. For example, the VHP is Global Hindu Supremacist Network that promotes violence and hate. It's a generalization labeling VHP as Global Hindu Supremacist Network or implies a complex organization with diverse activities. The claim ignores VHP as significant social humanitarian contribution. And then it goes into positive contribution of VHPA, bias in framing, etc. So we take every claim, and there are about 5 or 6 claims, about five in this report, and we refute every claim that they have. Okay, and so that is the summary part, and then we go into very detailed sentiment analysis. So what are the key phrases, for example, that they use?
Hmm.
And we talk about the key phrases that they've used. For example, uh, Hindu supremacist network, weaponization of multiple cultural. They think that we are weaponizing multicultural protections. Now, anyone who has followed X or Twitter in recent times will know that there is we are really uh, facing unprecedented
Yeah.
Hinduphobia in America. And
Yeah.
to say that we are weaponizing multicultural, in fact, we have come back and said that we don't even believe in affirmative action. So how can we be weaponizing multicultural protection? But we always advocated for equal opportunity for everyone, while recognizing that there are inequalities, while recognizing that there are people who need a helping hand, while recognizing that we need to level the playing field. We have said that to make facilities available for these people. So we can't really be weaponizing multicultural protection like they are claiming.
I think they're just throwing in words. It's a
This is going
mumbo jumbo of all
and you
sorts
can
of
see
words.
this is a mumbo jumbo collection of words, and they just put them all together and they just say, okay, let's just sprinkle these words because they catch someone's attention and get their search engine hits out of this.
Yeah.
And
So,
then
so
they
let me ask you to those that point, search engines. When you put this report out there, will the search engine start to use your information?
I hope so. I hope so. It's very hard to say because those algorithms keep changing. But we have used exact same words that they have used to counter them. So as you will see in subsequent pages, how we have countered each of the phrases they have used and in what context. So we did then headline analysis, sub-headline analysis. Saw how the story is framed, how their entire report is framed. So a report heavily frames VHP as global Hindu supremacist network using loaded language and selective information to depict the organization as inherently harmful. So that is their whole framing. And the context, it relies on isolated incidents of violence where there's no even not even proof that the Hindus initiated it, didn't initiate it, none of that, right? Just attribute anything negative to Hindus.
Yeah.
Then, interestingly enough, there's also analysis on order of information. So they put all the negative information up front,
Hmm.
and that way, it creates it creates an impression in your mind that these Hindus are all these horrible people. And then towards the end, they would put a couple of sentences here and there to appear to be neutral, and
So
that's
this
the
is
kind of
this
game.
reminds me of the show we did last week about NCRI. This trains a gullible American in the terms that this Savera wants the American to
Yeah.
be trained, brainwashed, and then that American then thinks Hindus are oppressors, Hindus are violent, Hindus are bringing all sorts of negativity and are the root of all problems in America. So
Yeah.
this is the worst of DEI.
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely. And to be fair, not just gullible Americans, but gullible Indians too.
gullible
And
Indians
especially
too.
the second, third generation, they've really figured out what words to use, what order of information to use, what adjectives to use, what adverbs to use in order to really brainwash people into being anti-Hindu.
So isn't this hate? This is hate speech,
It
really.
is hate speech. I mean, this entire report is hate speech. Um,
So
and
how do
the
we
whole,
get away with it? Hate
you
speech.
know,
It's
that's
freedom of
freedom of
speech.
speech. Everyone has freedom of speech, and the only way to counter is this kind of stuff, this kind of garbage, is through an intellectual argument. So if
Mm,
you look at the statements, like, they're logical fallacies and misleading statements. So we identified, there's several, but we identified some of the ones to make a case, right? So we identified a few of the misleading logical fallacies, and like false clause, strawman argument, fallacy, appeal to emotion, accurate representation, false attribution, uh, genetic, anecdotal, slippery slope. So, for example, they would say, um, like, halal food certification threatens the Indian economy and funds terrorism. It's appeal to nature. This assumes that a natural preference against halal certification without exploring economic and cultural context. Because even the Hindus who eat meat, they have a certain dietary requirements. They believe in, uh, you know, animal not suffering, and they believe in jhatka method of killing the animal.
yeah.
So to say that, oh, because you don't believe in halal, you are automatically Islamophobic. That's a appeal to nature. That's a wrong kind. It's a fallacy. There are other reasons. Or that's
It
right.
reminds me of this other thing. A Christian pastor in Tamil Nadu said, threatened the Hindus by saying, "If you don't convert, we are going to claim oppression of Christians."
Correct. Yeah. Uh, it's all kinds of stuff. VHPA has supported Modi's Discriminatory Citizenship Amendment Act. That's a black and white argument, right?
Yeah,
It is the black and white. It is a black and white argument because the statement reduces a complex policy debate to binary terms of support for discrimination without discussing its nuances. There are
yeah.
reasons why Hindus have said that CAA is important. They have said that the CAA type of provisions exists in many countries. India is not one of
Including Pakistan and Malaysia and
and
places like
including
that.
America and
Yeah,
America,
and America. Yes.
right? So, those are the kinds. So we take all of these arguments and we say these are fallacies. They are either strawman argument, appeal to emotion, anecdotal, bandwagon, ambiguity. So we've taken their statements and we have scientifically deconstructed these statements. Okay. Then there are a lot of misleading statistics, omission, and cherry picking, or loaded language, things like that, right? So 62 violent incidents attributed to the VHP between 2016 and 2019. So this is misleading statistics. It highlights specific incidents without considering broader trend in violence, who initiated it, which groups were involved, how many Hindus were impacted by that. None of that. So, for example, if you take, any in India, unfortunately, and nobody endorses it, but there are religious riots have happened for centuries. Now, to cherry pick and give misleading statistics does service to nobody. Especially if you claim to be a serious research organization that they
Hmm.
want to be, then they have to present the statistics that are not misleading,
Yeah.
instead of scoring cheap political points, which is what they're trying to do here. Then we analyze the euphemism and dysphemism that they're using. So, for example, they would call euphemism would be weaponizing multicultural protection. This is a dysphemism. Implies that Hindu organization exploit their minority status for sinister purposes. What have we done to to benefit from our minority status? We have not done anything that exploits our minority status. In fact, people have put us in the category of white adjacent and have
Yeah.
said that we are the privileged people,
We
right?
are not minorities really in that sense, except we are a minority immigrant community in terms of small numbers.
Yeah.
But we are not minorities. I have to say, this kind of talk also, I have had my American colleagues who have come and said, "Oh, your kid is going to college, but you get benefits because you're minority." I said, "I don't know what you mean by benefits. We don't get any benefits. We have to pay just like everybody else." And this person was shocked.
Yeah,
this person thought we, for whatever reason, we are minorities and we get benefits for free universities and free everything.
yeah. We are the last people to get anything for free.
Yeah, so this
Let's
kind of
know that.
rhetoric, this hate rhetoric reinforces that false narrative.
Yeah. In fact, the statistics show that in Ivy League schools, if there was no affirmative action, there would be 46%, 48% Asian Americans. That includes Chinese, Vietnamese, Indians, etc.
Yeah,
But because of the affirmative action, there are only about 17 to 18%. So we are the last people to claim any privileged status in America.
yeah,
Most of the Hindus that I know work very hard. They sacrifice a lot for their kids to make sure that their kids succeed in their academic pursuits.
yeah,
But this is the kind of anti-Hindu rhetoric that goes on, and they would come back and say, "Oh, it's all because of people are high caste or whatever it is," and this has nothing to do with caste, really. This is pure and simple Hindu hate,
yeah.
right? And so a lot of dysphomisms that we pointed out, then false equivalence. So for example, uh, VHP's action are akin to the Jim Crow era in the US. It's a historic false equivalence. Compares VHP action in India directly with systemic racial segregation in the US, despite significant differences in historic and social context. When did the Hindus, advocate for Jim Crow like era in India? Never.
Yeah, I have to say the Jim Crow system applies to the Hindus who are marginalized
Yeah,
in India, and that's not what they're saying here. They're saying here that the minority. Who is the minority? They're the global majority, the
yeah.
Muslims and the Christians.
So Hindu nationalism is comparable to Ku Klux Klan. Extreme false equivalence compares Hindu nationalism to KKK without evidence of systemic racial violence or similar objectives.
So we are Nazis. We
No
are
Hindu organization that I know have claimed superiority the same way KKK has claimed. It
So
just
we
has
are
not happened.
KKK, we are Nazis, we are what else of Jim Crow, era kind of oppressors. What else
No,
have they
yeah,
done?
well, you'll be surprised. They also compare us to ISIS at the same time. So there's a VHP's campaigns are as dangerous as ISIS propaganda.
I see. So IAMC is clean, huh?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
my
So
God.
this means that it is inappropriate equivalence because it equates VHP's campaigns with ISIS propaganda, which includes direct calls for violence and global terror campaigns
Oh,
lacking evidence of equivalence. So they are actually saying that, so our analysis of their sentence actually says that this is what they're trying to tell the world, that we are like ISIS. Now, where are the armed Hindus going around with machine guns and uh, trying to convert everyone to Hindu dharma, or
and
killing them
treating
randomly and seizing
ISIS,
power
yes.
everywhere and all of that?
And how were the Yazidi women treated by ISIS? When have any Hindu done anything like that?
Yeah.
I mean, the Hindu has suffered at the hands of all of these people, but we haven't done anything to them. Um, this is very, very scary. The
Yeah,
way they.
that's why we, again, unless we spend 150 $200,000, we cannot come up with a counter to this, because we have to
Hmm.
employ at least 3 or 4 people. They have to work for 3 4 months. They have to get all the, and they have to come up with the response. So what we did was we created a tool that analyzes their report, puts together a counter argument, analyzes the sentiment, analyzes the bias, understands what they're trying to say, and builds a counter argument. That is what is happening here. And
Hmm.
actually, this one is the first part that I'm talking about is not counter argument part, but just analyzing the biases and the sentiments. Right?
Highlights the real problematic areas of the Savera report,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. And then there are a lot of hidden patterns and trends. So they are, for example, uh, they would take um, uh, Hindu groups weaponize multicultural protection to curb free speech. They ignore all the multi faith activity initiatives that we have taken. And they neglect the instance of Hindu organizers engaging in constructive interfaith dialogue. They just don't care. Even if we are doing it, they don't want to see it because that does not fit their narrative.
Mm.
And they say VHP lobbies for anti-Muslim policies like CAA. Again, fails to consider legal frameworks and humanitarian arguments for policies like It's a Citizenship Amendment Act. It's just um, then bias analysis. So this is you make a statement, and for example, the VHP operates as a propaganda machine. So the target here, the subject is VHP. The sentiment towards the subject is negative. The sentiment category is keyword, and their adjective adverb, and their it's negative, and the rating is 4. But on the other hand, Hindutva borrows from fascist ideology. Now, the subject in this case is Hindutva and RSS. The sentiment is negative. The sentiment category is comparative. It is comparing Hindutva and fascism, and it's a false bias classification is false equivalence, because you cannot compare a ideology that advocates for a Hindu way of life, the essence of Hindu dharma, which advocates for equality among everyone, ekam sata Bahuda vadanti, respect all different ways of all different philosophies, all different ways of worship, all different books that people follow. You cannot narrow it, boil it down to just saying that, oh, we are fascist, because there's no fascist definition that we would fit under.
They
Right?
don't care, right?
They don't care because they just have a narrative that they want to promote. Uh,
Fit all Hindu organizations into.
yeah,
Yeah.
for example, they would say love jihad is a conspiracy theory to incite hate. But they don't understand that this is coming from families of girls, like we saw the Kerala story, right? Where families of girls who uh, who came out, and the girls came out, the girls who were sent to Afghanistan and other places came out rather, um, to Afghanistan as well as the other ISIS hotbeds,
Yeah.
after being deceptively converted. And so their families and these girls are speaking up, right? You can talk about
Well,
that.
actually, it is the biggest case on that topic is by the Kerala Christian Church
Yeah,
in the courts
yeah,
about what's happening. So it's not that is Christianity, and the Dalit Solidarity Network is Christian.
yeah,
Ambedkar Circle, I don't know what they are. Some of them might be Christian, but they don't care because they
yeah,
are all united in this anti-Hindu, anti-India kind of thing.
yeah. So without considering that this is actually not something that we are engineering as Hindu organizations, it's actually coming out of people who have actually suffered,
Yeah,
the families who have suffered. And
yeah.
don't I mean, if they don't want to read up on it, just go watch a movie. Like, get a cliff note version of what history is.
Yeah.
Then there's media bias, and there's a, for example, uh, media bias categories are like sensationalism, bias by omission, story framing, spin, uh, bias by labeling, adjective adverb, logical fallacies, cultural and ideological bias, uh, and so on and so forth. Then there's a source bias analysis. So we have taken all the sources they've used, and we have said what kind of biases are there inherent in the sources itself. So it could be presence, balance, absence of balanced viewpoints, select the way they've selected the sources, bias by omission, political ideological leaning of the sources they've picked, and then we have a detailed analysis of all these sources that they've used.
So
The
how many
organization.
pages is this one rebut?
This is 65 pages,
And their report was how many pages?
50.
My goodness, this is good.
Yeah. So you can see that here we have looked at all the organizations, all the sources. So the Wire magazine, Al Jazeera, Caravan magazine, and we have said these are the sources, these are the biases that they have, and these are the statements that are hateful or anti-Hindu.
Yeah.
So we have actually looked into all the sources that they've used to make their points. Then we talk about, then the next section is building a counter narrative. So you can't
Mm.
really just do a technical analysis and say, oh, this is wrong with you. Then we have to come up with our own counter narrative, the truth has to come out. So
Mhm.
our we have our tool actually builds this counter narrative based on all the all the uh, sophistication that we have built into that. And you can see that here it's analysis, the introduction section, what are the claims, what is the counter narrative in detail, and what are the legal precedences, and so on and so forth. So we analyze all the major claims. So for example, land jihad that they talk about, and they say is the claim is that land jihad is unfounded, and it's just
I just want to point out the biggest problem in India right now is that the Waqf board is
exactly that can
grabbing
claim a
land
thousand
left
year old
and
religion
right.
they own, right?
They're impoverishing poor people
Yeah.
by grabbing illegally land, and they are the number one. Waqf Islamic Waqf board is the number one landowner in India, out taking the Catholic Church. I
Yeah.
mean, those two are the biggest private landowners in India, not the Hindus.
No, millions and millions of acres, right? But
Yes,
again, they
more than Pakistan and Bangladesh itself, maybe.
I mean, look, I mean, there's a Bet Dwarka had, which is one of the most auspicious places for Hindus.
Mhm.
It's a island off of Dwarka in
Yeah,
Gujarat,
yeah.
and it's strategically important, but also it's a very auspicious land for Hindus. And all of a sudden, there are thousands of illegal people putting up. They took over the island, and recently it was, all the illegal settlements were removed. But that is why would you think why would you think that they decided to settle there?
Mhm.
Because it is a very important uh, island between India and Pakistan in some ways, right?
Strategic point,
Very
right?
strategic. Uh, so these are the kinds of things. I mean, why do you think that there was one of the people who was protesting at the anti-CAA rally actually made um, a statement that they should take over uh, or they should break the India's neck by taking over the chicken's neck area in the
Mm,
northeast India, which is a small narrow strip of land that
mm,
connects India, the one part of India, the western part of India, with the northeastern states. And there was
mhm,
an actual statement made in one of the rallies that if CAA is not removed, then we should just take over that place and cut off India's northeast from India's
the
other
rest
part
of
of
India.
India.
Yeah,
And
you know, yeah. So no, this is also a very crazy allegations and assertions. But like you said, if it's not countered, this becomes a narrative,
yeah,
right? Yeah. It's like we live in alternate worlds, Ajay. This
yes,
kind of narrative here and what happens in India is completely different,
it's
right?
completely different. It's a different world, as you said. Then we have analyzed all the major events, global VHP in major events. They have said that was one of their sections. So we have a counter narrative for and rebuttal. For example, Barbary structure, Gujarat riots, anti-Christian riots in Odisha, Delhi riots, and we have some legal precedences as to how the court saw these things.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we have they have a section on VHPA regularly platforms extremist, and we have a counter that here, and so on and so forth, right?
For
And
them,
then
we are all extremists.
yeah,
For
we're
them,
all
we are all
yeah,
extremists.
and this show is the extremist show, right? Because
Yeah,
we are defending Hindu rights and we are speaking up for the persecuted Hindus. All of a
yeah.
sudden, we become extremists because
Extremists.
we are advocating for human rights. We are extremists.
Yeah, yeah.
We have done nothing to be extremists. We have not even uh, we have never gone out and said that we want to convert anyone. We have not said that we want everyone to become Hindus. We have not said any of
And
that,
we have
and
never
we are
committed
extremists.
any serious acts of violence in this country.
Eh,
Yeah, you
not
know.
one, right? So
Hopefully, we never do.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then so we have all of that about casteism. We have analysis of VHP's casteism, so we have that, and so on and so forth, right? And then finally there's some major events referred to in the report. We have analyzed all the major events that they have referred to in the report, including the symbolic uh, distribution of Trishul by VHP, which is a tradition that goes back a long time where we
Say that
say, I'm
again. A
making a pledge
symbolic
to protect
distribution
Hindu
of
society.
Trishul.
Yeah,
Say that again. What was that?
the the little Trishul,
Yeah.
replica of Trishul, right? Is a sign that Trishul is given to people after they make a play. It's just a sign that we are going to be strong, and obviously Hindus need that kind of reinforcement because so many invaders came to India through the history, especially after 750 AD, 770 AD, and they ruled India for 1,000 years straight. And so this is a sign that I'm resolving in my heart that I'm going to stand up and not be subjugated with that kind of to that kind of slavery. And
Hmm.
they think that this is like sign of this is a sign of militarism. This you, this is like a 2-inch trishul that people are using to take a pledge to protect the Hindu society with by becoming strong. So they're not.
Essentially, they want to denigrate and deny us the use of our own symbols. So Trishul is a symbol of Shiva, and they're
Yeah,
saying you cannot use it. It's
no,
like the northeast, some of the northeastern Christian states in India are threatening Hindus from even saying Om Namah Shivaya. I don't know if you know that.
no.
You know,
I'm not
yeah,
surprised. So,
yeah.
and then there's no legal case. Nobody's been found guilty, and it's all often considered a symbolic gesture in Hindu culture. So,
Hmm.
to frame that as a propagation of violence, come on, or militarization, that's absurd. It's completely absurd, but that's what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
And then we have major organizations who are mentioned. So we have kind of analysis of major organizations like Amnesty International, CARE. These are the organizations that are mentioned in the report. So we analyze them: IMAC, Human Rights Watch, Hindutva Watch, Hindus for Human Rights. So we have description, their activities, their bias assessment, all of that. And then we have analyzed their footnotes. Now we obviously
Mhm.
don't want to spend time and resources in analyzing. We can if we want to 160 footnotes or 500 footnotes or whatever. We just took top 20 and we analyzed that, and we said, you know what kind of bias their footnotes themselves have. So the footnotes are not credible basically.
Mm.
And
So you just you took every aspect of their Savera report, broke it down into specific categories,
correct.
and through this technology, you're not employing 200 people to do this report,
No,
or $500,000 to create the
no.
report. Yeah.
Well, you know we have to be creative because we don't have the amount of money, and we don't work in academia full time, and you know we have to do with what we have, and what we have is innovation on our side, and we can use innovation.
Hmm.
We have appendix where we have said that what methodology we have used. So you can see that we have and we are very transparent. We have uh, a few thousand rules now. We started with 2,000 of them. We review the documents, we perform, we have customized code that does sentiment analysis. We do deep learning in some places. We have our own, software that we have developed, for example, using standard tools that anyone in this area would know. We have, we have given the methodology where we have done the how we have done the narrative analysis, where we built our own large language model from scratch, and we use that. We Scientific and computational integration, computational algorithm integration that we have integrated with. So it's basically a fusion of multiple AI technologies into one. And then some places we have rephrased the statement, but we want to be transparent, so we have said how it was rephrased to generalize for the analysis and all that. And then finally we have how do we calculate the sentiment analysis and numeric score. We have entire algorithm here. If they want to reproduce it, they're welcome to do it. I don't know if anyone has time for that, but by all means, please. And then
I
we have
don't think
glossary
they're
of.
interested in rebutting your rebut. They just want
Yeah,
to
they
get
are
their
also very
story out.
interested.
They
So
hate speech out.
yeah, so I won't go over all the reports, but we have similar reports that we have created that counter what they have. So this gives
Let's take
you.
a look at the New York Times, which I
Yeah,
believe
that's a really interesting one. So let me show you that.
for a
So New
general
York Times
audience, I think,
recently came
yeah.
up with the. So it's very interesting, right? New York Times came up with this. New York Times came up with what do you call
A story on
a story,
Bangladesh.
right? A
Bangladesh.
story on Bangladesh,
Mhm.
and they said that the uh, incidents that are happening in Bangladesh are largely exaggerated, right? That's what they said,
They
and
sent two reporters to Bangladesh, and I want to just make a comment here.
yeah, please introduce the subject,
New
and
York,
I'll bring this
New
up.
York Times doesn't have any Hindu reporters who can go to Bangladesh. Okay, they found two Muslim young, I guess, reporters to go to Bangladesh and do this report. And we want to remind everybody that New York Times published a report when the regime change happened on August 5th, and the title of their report said uh, the revenge attacks on the Hindus, right? As if the Hindus in Bangladesh, the minority Hindus in Bangladesh, deserved the revenge attacks by the Islamists because the Hindu population supposedly had been on the side of the ousted prime minister. So their political leanings, according to New York Times, was that the Hindus deserved the atrocities committed on them. And let's think about what were the atrocities: looting, burning of all homes, killing of people, kidnapping of girls, and raping and forced conversions. These are revenge atrocities that New York Times condones as deserving for the minority Hindus standing with the ousted PM. But the ousted PM was not a perfect person either. Under her rule, also the Hindus suffered.
Yeah,
And we know what happened in 2021, Durga Puja, one example.
yeah,
But many, many examples. A population that fell from what, 22% in 1951 to less than 8% and expected to disappear from Bangladesh in a couple of decades. That's the kind of story that New York Times sends their reporters to the country to look at, and then they put a report out saying, hey, it's not a big deal. Actually, the big deal is coming by from India that's exaggerating the stories. That is how human rights is looked at by New York Times. But anyway, let's look
so
at the
yeah,
report.
so really good setting the stage, right? And I'll tell you something that you may or may not have seen. We tweeted about it today. The Economist
Hmm.
has
Yeah,
named Bangladesh country of the year,
yes.
and they're saying that there's so much positivity and all that to look forward to and all that. Now this is the new regime in Bangladesh that is responsible for, as per the report in Indian Parliament, over 2200 cases of or incidents of persecution of Hindus, whether it is harassment of Hindus, killing of Hindus, vandalism of temples, forced resignation of Hindus, all kinds of atrocities, right?
Yeah.
Um, and this is the country that the Economist, supposedly a reputable publication, has called a country of the year 2024, because
Hmm.
they see so much positivity coming out of there. Where is the positivity from the Hindu perspective here? Huh? There's
They
none.
don't care. It's
They
not
don't
just the
care.
Hindus, I want to say. It's a minority Christians, minority Buddhists, and the small percentage of tribals.
Yeah,
Everybody is a target for the Islamists unleashed
exactly.
by the regime
And
change.
then Yunus, Muhammad Yunus, so a peace prize, a Nobel Peace Prize winner no less, is enabling all the atrocities.
Mhm. And his economy, as an economist, I want to say, he's driven Bangladesh to the brink of nothing, and he's begging India for rice.
Yeah,
And India is giving them rice.
at the same time he is going around maligning India and
Yeah.
persecuting Hindus.
Yeah. But anyway,
So this
this
is the
New York Times story was pretty atrocious
yeah.
in ignoring a lot. Let's take a look at your
So
rebuttal.
this is the tool that we created that will write a that it's called we call it samya. Samya means balance. So we take news in Sanskrit. That's the Sanskrit meaning of word samya. So we take the narrative and we if there is we think that it is it is against Hindu. The writings or news report or article or whatever it is has anti-Hindu elements to it, and it needs a balanced response. So, in order to bring about balance in reporting and balance in news and balance in editorials, we wrote a tool called Samya for Hindu News. And what it does is it takes it did in this case it took the narrative that was or a news report presented by New York Times, and it built a counter argument to that. So, for
What is
example,
HAHRI? You
so
should define.
HARI, so Hindu Pact has four major initiatives. One of them is American Hindus Against Defamation, that we talked about earlier. Second one is Chingari. Chingari is Coalition for Hindu Girls Abducted and Their Rights. The third one is Hindu Vote, which we talked about couple of months ago, where we do voter education and candidate, uh, vote awareness about candidate awareness about Hindus, Hindu awareness about candidates, uh, get out of the vote campaign, things like that. And the fourth one is Hari, which is Hindus advancing human rights. So, human rights in Bangladesh, human rights of Kashmiri Hindus, human rights of Hindus in Canada, for example, all of these human rights initiative are under the banner called Hari. So, this is Hindus advancing human rights. It could be Hindus in, we talked about in past, we have talked about Hindus in Pakistan, Hindus in Afghanistan, everywhere, and not just Hindus. When Yazidis were under this threat, we spoke against Yazidis.
You
When they
spoke for the Yazidis and
all the
against the
Yazidis.
ISIS.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when ISIS were were killing Yazidis and capturing the Yazidi women and selling them as slaves and all that, we spoke up for Yazidis, and we've spoken about against, for example, the what has happened in UK in past to Hindus over there. So all these human rights initiatives are under our Hari banner.
One question for you: those that Savera group of entities, have they? I haven't gone and looked. Have they commented on the atrocities in Bangladesh?
So I've seen some tweets from Hindus for Human Rights that cursorily kind of say that we don't want we are against the attacks on Hindus, but certainly it's in the passing mention. They've not really. I've not seen they've come out on the street to protest against the Israeli response in
Yeah,
Palestine,
they stand with
in the West
Gaza
Bank, but they have
Palestinians.
not come out on the street
Yeah,
asking for the Biden administration in America to take action uh, against Bangladesh. So they have not come
I
out
only
and
asked just to highlight the hypocrisy of the Ambedkar Study Circle, IA, Indian American Muslim Council, the Dalit Solidarity Network, and Hindus for Human Rights. They have no compassion. They don't stand for human rights. They only stand for Hindu hate.
exactly. You could not have said it better. I mean, perfectly said. I could not have said it better. You made a perfect point. I truly, that's exactly what they are. So this is this is a response we created in a form of a blog. We said the Yunus regime, and what is the Yunus regime? What is the Yunus regime's impact on Hindus? What kind of systemic targeting, not isolated incidents? How they overlooked historic and contemporary evidence. Economic disparity as misleading. They say, oh, there's economic disparity and all that. That's a misleading explanation. That there's no their economic differences, but that doesn't mean you weaponize that against the Hindus.
Mhm.
Misplaced focus on Indian policies, nothing to do with Indian policies. You're
Yeah.
killing your own Hindu
Citizens.
countrywoman who has
Citizens.
lived there,
Yeah.
who are the native population there, who have
Yeah.
lived there for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And we have to revisit religious freedom in Bangladesh,
Yeah.
and international and regional you know really implications, and then we call for comprehensive engagement.
Mhm.
So that's the kind of you know as I said, we spent countless number of months coming to a stage where we can actually take something that is printed by reputable, supposedly reputable publication like New York Times, and come up with a coherent, intelligent argument that creates these kinds of narratives.
This is very good, and I know that it was tweeted out, and I also tweeted it in New York Times. But when you do it, because you're the entity that provides, you should actually tweet it and put it on social media on for New York Times,
Right.
right? I mean, The Economist, if you're going to do a complete, if you're going to do something about why Bangladesh should never have been nominated, especially this year,
Yeah.
the way it's happening, so much human rights violations, you should tweet it to New York Economist and have people do it. Because that's the only way, maybe even they pay attention. Otherwise, they don't care.
You're
They don't care.
You're absolutely right, Sudha. You're absolutely right. And Sudha, one last thing I'll show you is another tool that we have in our tool chest, and that is this will be this is advanced beta. It will be fully done in next couple of days, and this is the one where we do daily news analysis. So
Mm.
you can see this here. We have taken some news items and we have done the sentiment analysis of the news and the bias analysis, and we give some rating from the Hindu perspective, from India perspective, from Hindutva perspective, and what kind of bias is there in terms of language, source, representation, mischaracterization. So, for example, the this particular article, it says the minority in Bangladesh and our hypocrisy. That's the article. You can see here. Can you see the article? The minority in Bangladesh.
Yeah. It's very hard to see it. It's small, but you speak to it.
This is an article that came out uh, in DH. So this is the one where they talk about uh, the minorities in Bangladesh and our hypocrisy. Is the Indian subcontinent tormented by the traumatic memory of partition violence, incapable of learning this important lesson, or are we, instead of destined to remain trapped in the cycles of communal politics and religious bigotry? Remember, Hindus are the sufferers here.
Yeah.
Hindus are being, the atrocities are on Hindus. And these are people who are blaming the victim for their victimhood, right?
Yeah,
So,
which we saw with the New York Times. They were blaming
exactly.
the victims.
So again, from Deccan Herald, uh, a paper, I believe it's been published from Bangalore, and these are the kind of things that they talk about. Okay, so we came up with a counter narrative, and this is our counter narrative. So I'll make it bigger. So uh, we say that look, this news item is the sentiment towards India is kind of green. So a rating is two, is rating of 1 to 5. One is very pro India, five is very anti India. If it is very dark green, it is one. Very dark red, it is 5.
Five.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
bad.
here the sentiment towards India is probably 2. Hindus and Hindutva is 4. That means it's fairly anti-Hindu and fairly
Hmm.
Hindutva. And the bias rating is on the language, the way they will use the language is 4, and so on and so forth. We say, okay, well, can you give me some more details? I can click here
Hmm.
and I can show you the details. And can you see the details?
It's not coming up yet.
Okay, yeah, because I'm sharing a different screen. So let me go back and share the detailed screen. Okay, so I'll just give me a second. Because I'm not sharing that screen. Uh,
And so this daily report, you're going to publish it
we're
every
going to
day.
publish this daily. Yeah, this we have to do this because
But you have to do it on social media.
we
That
will.
is,
Everything will here will be tweeted out, and it's all kind of built into that. So, uh, can you see the screen now?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you can see that, and I'll make it bigger. And you can see there's an abstract of the news, so you don't, if you don't read the whole article, we give you an abstract. Then we
Yeah.
can say the why is the sentiment kind of green, of somewhat lighter green, because it criticizes the India's response. Then we say discusses violence against Hindus, which might be underscored neglect of lack of concern for international regional actors. Hindutva, uh, bias analysis for language, source. They don't cite anything, so we give them a green, um, and so on and so forth. right? So
Mhm.
we have a full analysis of news. So
Mhm.
this is being rolled out in next couple of days, and you will see more of this. We have other
Very nice.
tools in the pipeline that you should see coming out also. For example, we have analysis of tweets that are related to Hindus and India, and that tool will be rolled out as well in shortly in the next few weeks. So
At some point, you should also look at the narratives that come out of some of the universities, right? I
yeah,
mean, the Rutgers, the Audrey Trushky trying to push through caste as protected
we
based
will.
on five examples of nothing,
Yes.
huh?
we uh, we to just so that I mean, this particular tool,
Yeah.
um, we have looked at uh, you know I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but dozens and dozens, probably in hundreds, a couple of hundred publications in peer reviewed papers in order to build this tool.
Yeah.
And it is only going to get better because we are we we have such a big corpus of anti-Hindu material out there
Mm.
that we can utilize that to understand all different ways in people have all different ways people have used to attack Hindus, to malign Hindus, and to malign Hindu dharma, and to malign Hindutva.
Mhm.
And anyone who says that Hindutva is not the same as Hindu dharma, they it's just that's the first sign of Hinduphobia.
I kind of feel that the virulence of attack increases because nothing they say really can be proven. Meaning, when they say we are oppressors, there is no proof they're oppressors. The one about the ethno nationalism, the way that, what is it, the professor at Harvard, whatever her name was, she said, well, we need to find the money. We have to trace the money, but we can't find any money trail, right? Of the so-called Hindutva and wherever the money trail is, they can't find it.
No,
This is this,
you're so right because I mean, we are all 501(c)(3) organizations. Our books are open,
yeah.
and because people send money to people, they give $20 to support a little kid in India.
I
Okay,
know.
and this is not something that's going to like, oh, no Hindu is getting armed like ISIS with machine
Or Al
guns and
Qaeda or the
with
Jamaati and all of
mortar
that.
launchers and all the other
Yeah.
heavy medium light and heavy weapons. We are giving $20 so a kid can go to
Kid can go
school.
to school.
But
And see,
Sudha, people are threatened by that education itself.
yeah, yeah, they are threatened by it because we are not brainwashing kids to hate others. The children are not being brainwashed to hate others, to kill others, or anything. The children are encouraged to. The Pakistani kids, I mean, Hindu and Christian and other refugee kids coming in, the kind of opportunities they are being given, at least through some of these NGOs, they're
Yeah,
learning, to compete in Sanskrit competition,
yeah.
learning to compete in chess. This
And
is
they're
this
doing
is so
Ramayana
possible.
quizzes. And then okay, I mean, look at our text forms are public, uh, public record. You can
Yeah,
go to Charity Navigator, you can go to ProPublica, you can go anywhere, download the report, analyze them, study them, and find anything that is negative. There's just nothing. First of all, having volunteered for Hindu organizations all through my adult life and even pre-adult life, I can tell you that we are all hand to mouth living. there's
yeah.
no there's no money to just kind of
We're
promote.
just doing the work we do because we are passionate about our identity, our faith, and we're not going to let somebody else define it.
I
And
mean,
that's what your reports do. You're saying we define us, you don't define us, right? And I'm hoping that these reports start to create a corpus of,
yes,
counters.
well, I have a question for you. How much do you think this technology cost us?
You know what? I don't know if you should even say that in public.
I can say that in public.
Yeah.
It cost us zero. Other
It
than
was man
computational cost,
hours, right? It was a
other
man
than
hour.
computational cost,
Yeah.
other than we when we go and buy servers and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
We
yeah.
have to pay for the server cost and computing cost
Yeah.
and things like that. Otherwise, it's all Shamadan.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
The
It's your
company that
effort,
created this
your
technology,
voluntary
the
time.
company that created the technology didn't charge us anything,
Yeah.
and basically, it is all volunteer work.
That is
Really,
again very unique to our community, I would say.
yeah,
The fact of doing something for the dharma, protecting our dharma,
yeah.
it's our duty. And so it's very, very laudable, Jay. I have to say, I'm a little bit relieved that we have a way to counter
We
the
are going to
nonsense.
counter.
I hate to say the word nonsense. It is not nonsense. The hate speech
It's
is
very
so bad,
malicious. It's very malicious.
malicious, dangerous. It is actually the Nazi propaganda
Yeah,
by the other side
yeah.
on us, and they would like to exterminate us. And this is what that some of our leaders said in the dismantling global Hindutva. That was an attempt to hang 9/11 around the Hindu neck,
And,
right? Because they did
and,
it during
the
that time.
worst part is it was done during night. It was done in September on September
The
11th.
20th anniversary of the 9/11, they did it, so maybe the world would
Focus
have
shifts.
remembered.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so the focus shifts to Hindus.
yeah, to Hindus. Yeah, yeah.
Unbelievable.
So yeah, yeah, unbelievable. But unfortunately, Ajay, Kali Yuga has only started. We have
Yeah.
a long way to go. So these are all good ways to counter and
And
stay a
so
little bit ahead of the game. Thank
absolutely.
you so
So
much for
thank you,
doing
Sudha.
all.
This was a great show. Thank you for giving me opportunity to talk about some of the work that we have done. And as I end this show, I have an announcement to make. Um, I my term as the president of VHPA is getting over tomorrow. And one of the decisions that VHP has made is to spin off Hindu Pact as a separate organization, separate 501(c)(3). So next week when we talk, I would not be, this show will not be brought to you by World in the Council of America or VHPA. It will be Hindu Pact as a separate nonprofit organization. So we are in the process of registering Hindu Pact, and we can use all the support in terms of volunteers, in terms of funding, in terms of so that we can create these kinds of technologies. Because even though we get a lot of shramdan, we still need money for hosting, we still need money for buying servers, and going forward there's a lot of manual work that is going to be needed to curate the material and all that. So we need so we need to have student interns, we need to have other employees. So I would really appreciate if everyone can still go to the same link, hindupact.org/donate, and please contribute whatever you can, even if it's $10 a month. That would go a long way. So thank you, Sudha. Thanks for being with me on this and on this
Thank
journey.
you. We
Thank
learned
you.
a
It's
lot.
been
We
great.
learned a lot about how the anti-Hindu, anti-India cabal works, right?
Yeah,
And it's important for every Hindu out there to stand up and push back,
yeah,
fight
absolutely.
back, fight back.
Fight
Be
back.
a Kali, be a Kali. Let the heads roll.
Uh, Thank you again, Sudha. So
Thank
thank
you.
you,
Good
everyone.
night.
This has been Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact, Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective, an initiative of World Council of America (VHPA), and with Sudha Jagannath. I am Ajay Shah, the president of VHPA, at least for another day, and then it's taken over by more competent people, and I wish them all the best publicly and as well as I've done it in private. So VHP's great work continues, and Hindu Pact will flourish as an independent organization. Thank you, everyone.
All
Namaste.
right. Namaste.